Welcome to our next session for Aligned 2017, the virtual summit dedicated to all things B2B sales and marketing alignment. I'm here today with Marika Kemble, president of Inside Sales Team, a high-growth company that is offering outsourced sales development and marketing support services to teams around the country, including many companies that the viewers here will recognize. So, Marika, excited to have you on. Excited to have you tell your story and explain how teams are using Inside Sales Team.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm really excited to be here and commend you on what you're doing with the Aligned conference. I think it's a great idea and thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, thank you. My pleasure. I'm getting as much out of it as anybody. Start by telling people your background and your role with Inside Sales Team.
Sure. So I started at Inside Sales Team about a year ago as president. And prior to this, I've spent about a decade in the financial services industry in sales and sales management positions, service management, sales support functions, and account management functions in a commercial bank setting and an investment bank setting. And so this was in some ways a change culturally for sure. The sales and marketing community is so fun and high energy and creative, and that's been thrilling. And then in some ways, you know, the core elements of, you know, what I do every day, which is, you know, really working with people and, you know, finding ways to inspire and engage people to action is very similar to what I've done in the past. So it's been a fun ride and really enjoying it. Inside Sales Team started in 2010 and our founder, Steve Hayes, started the company because he was working with a lot of high growth tech companies, large companies as well, that were struggling with how to meet their number in you know, challenging economic environment. And he had supported them in a variety of ways. He'd been a sales trainer, a sales team builder. He would recruit and hire sales managers and sales teams, and then do the training to get them up and running when teams had, you know, sort of big changes, staffing wise, personnel wise. And then he'd also started to help companies build their tech stack to support their sales force. And one of the things that just became really clear as the recession hit was that you could do all this great preparation for your outside sales team, but if there wasn't a real investment in developing and cultivating prospects and leads, that it would be hard, if not impossible, to have the long-term success that everyone was striving for. So at that time, a company called Regus, some of you may know as the shared office space company based out of the UK, asked Steve if he would consider beginning to fulfill this function for him and for them, and that was the beginning. So you know, 7 years later, on our 7th year here, we're proud to work with a lot of great companies and you know, continuing to evolve our business model as the industry evolves, and feeling really good about that.
Yeah, and full disclosure for the attendees, and this was not timed this way on purpose, but we adopted you guys and began implementing you this week. And what that entailed was two of your team members, Andy and Chris, coming down Chattanooga, met them last night, and basically embedding here in our sales.
Yeah.
Shocked at the sophistication and the intensity and the intelligence that these guys bring. I mean, honestly, we adopted you based on recommendations from a number of companies that are really killing it, and I can already sense that there's a reason for that.
Well, I was going to say we've been using Ambition for a long time, and have always said that we would love it. We think we could just kill it working with you and for you, and we're so excited for the relationship to grow in this way. So
the feeling is very mutual here. The goal for this interview, really, Marika, is to go over kind of two sets of things. One, how you've aligned your sales organization internally with inside sales team. And obviously you guys, kind of have this incredible array of knowledge and practices and technology savvy. So I'm very interested in hearing how you're doing that. And then secondly, how clients are using you guys, maybe in some creative ways, to align their teams and fill in the gaps between sales and marketing and demand gen here in 2017.
Yeah. Well, internally, one of the things that we spend a lot of time refining is our organizational structure. That is an important starting point. I do have my opinion is that org structure isn't everything, but knowing how to look for what's working and what's not working organizationally and structurally is important. And a wise mentor once made the observation to me that's really stuck with me, which is that, hey, if you're having to have a lot of meetings all day long to figure out how to get something done, it's a clue that maybe there's something about your structure that's not right. If the teams are set up for great action, then you probably don't need to be constantly in a meeting to talk about what the next action is. And I thought, that was a great observation of like, how do you look out for those triggers or those signs that maybe something's not aligned? So we're always paying attention to that. And I'll give you an example of a way that we're starting to experiment with a little bit of a shift in our organization. So traditionally we had been set up and we're sort of marching down a path of having divisions within the company. Customer success is a division, marketing is a division, inside sales and sales, our sales execution is a division, business development is a division for us, right? Our business development is a division for us. And sales operations is a division. So we have these divisional structures. But what we started to find is that even in a relatively small company like ours, that staying connected seemed like it was requiring a lot of effort. And so what we've started to experiment a little bit with is creating more hybrid roles where in that customer success type position, do you also have some responsibility for a certain amount of marketing, content creation, sort of creative brief type work, and a certain amount of sales operations work. And in some ways, that sounds a little, it goes against maybe your grain of what you'd initially think is a great idea, because wait, how do you find somebody that's good at all of those things? But what I'm finding is that there are moments where those can overlap effectively, and you can ensure a little bit more speed to execution and a little bit more consistency of everybody's understanding of what needs to be done for a project to be effective, or for sales development to really run like a well-oiled machine. So, we're experimenting with that right now. I'd actually shout out to the community listening at the Align conference and say, hey, if you guys are experimenting with something similar and want to kind of talk through what your experiences are a little bit offline, I'd love to brainstorm and see if we can learn together, because it's always a moving target, and you've got to just make sure you're set up as best as you can be. So I'll pause, see if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can say, and I think this is pretty cool, is that you guys are kind of going against the grain, which is, hyper segmentation, it seems like, in organizations these days. But I will attest to, and this is just from a marketing standpoint, this obviously only goes to a certain point. At a certain point, you're too lean, spread too thin, but definitely having people play multiple roles, and I've had to take on certain ops roles, here that I've had to essentially learn and implement. But I think there's been benefits to that too, because as you said, there's no swifter way to do it than when it's one person who is capable of doing all these different things, and there's no people to work through, and there's no schedules to coordinate. Right.
Yeah. And sometimes it's also like just knowing enough to be able to have a more efficient conversation with the person that you need to help you execute, right? So like if you know enough about how you want your data organized, let's say, in your CRM, or, how fields are created and used and integrated into your CRM, which probably for many of us is Salesforce. then you have a little bit better of a conversation with your sales ops expert about how to get from point A to point B. And so it's not always necessarily about doing it all yourself, although certainly a certain amount of self-service does lend some speed. But sometimes it's also about, having enough of your hand in enough to be able to come to a solution more expediently.
I'd like to hear, because you work for some really well-known companies. You've got Adobe on your website, DiscoverOrg, a couple other big ones. So tell me what some of the use cases have been, where teams have been seeing success, and what's the rationale sort of for bringing in mercenary
it's interesting.
BDRs.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like the focus of the discussion over these few days around alignment, the sales and marketing alignment, because I actually think that oftentimes our use case is exactly in the nexus of that challenge. And so one thing that we think sets us apart, first of all, is that we always do surveys for our meetings. And what our aim there is to really sort of focus everybody on quality. So the first challenge in alignment, whether your sales development team reports in through marketing or reports in through sales, whether sales and marketing, how much overlap there is in that leadership structure within your company. One of the big challenges is everybody's definition of value the same. So, that plays itself out in what's your discovery criteria, what's your qualification criteria, when do we progress something from an MQL to an opportunity, an SQL, and then to an opportunity, those kinds of definitional things. And a lot of times confusion about those terms and those expectations is a way that, misalignment becomes really clear. And so the survey that we do with customers is a way to ensure that we're getting really quick, we like it. We do it on a survey on a daily basis, but we like within 3 days that you've given us feedback on how did that meeting measure up? How many stars would you give that meeting? Are you going to move it to an opportunity? Give us a little bit more qualitative feedback about what happened on the call so that we can make sure that we're adding value. And what's interesting about that is it takes that value rating, it captures a value rating right from the end user, from the account executive that had the meeting. And so it's oftentimes when we're reviewing what's going on those surveys and the feedback that we're getting with maybe our point of contact with a company who's maybe a director of marketing or a sales manager or a VP of sales, we're helping to unearth maybe some places where there is disconnect between expectations or just disconnect of expectations among that team internally. And, we don't see it as a problem per se, so much as a real opportunity to all get on the same page and make sure that everybody's sort of achieving the value proposition of sales development. And so that's one way that we sort of facilitate a better alignment with all of our customers. There's a couple of other ways that I think, different engagements materialize, that alignment in different ways. But some of our most successful relationships are based on, are founded in the fact that our SDRs and the AEs have really strong relationships. They take the time to build a connection and a sense of mutual, professional respect and, appreciation of each other's goals. So, you mentioned that we were down in Chattanooga this week, and, really 80% of the value there from our perspective is in having our team lead get to know the AEs, get to know what their priorities are, what their personalities are, what their challenges are. Some of it is like really just having a conversation about expectations, but there's something deeper. Like you really have to build that trust with each other so that you can give each other feedback in, two-way street and learn and grow because most companies that start working with us don't have it all figured out. One of my pet peeves this month is when I talk with a technology provider or anybody really, but, oftentimes, I'm in a sales cycle with somebody and telling me like, oh yeah, like if you can just send me like a perfect process map and a perfect this, I can guarantee you implementation is going to be great. And I'm like, who can do that, right? Like whose process is perfect? If I have to be perfect for this to work, like I don't want to sign up for it because I'm not perfect, and nobody is. So a lot of times, we are helping companies work through really common normal challenges about, where AEs are catching leads, how developed those leads are and how cultivated those leads are when they catch them, how they move them through the sales cycle, and that sort of thing. So if we have a good mutual trust with the AE, that is such a prized relationship for us, and we can really help them. It's like, hey, if you need a little opportunity acceleration help, we can do that. Hey, if you want more at-bats to practice a new pitch or a positioning statement that you're trying, we can do that. If you think that, you're going to do better in a certain industry or with a certain persona, like let's experiment with that. Let's set aside, 20% of our calling effort and do a little bit of an experiment to test and learn on something new. And certainly we can do that at the direction of our key contacts, but if we can really have an open dialogue with the AEs about what we're doing as well, that's really valuable.
Yeah, and I love the flexibility and I don't know of a comparable role that's just this pure flex player like you guys can be, coming to organization and essentially bolstering wherever it's needed within the company. So I think the other awesome thing, just talking to the guys from last night, was they're coming in here with having just worked with 3 very well-known high-growth SaaS companies prior. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're not sending novices in here to help. You're sending people who have more experience, more diversity of experience in doing the specific role.
Yeah, I take that as a big compliment because I think the world of you guys. One of the things that it's an insight Chris was down with last night, an insight he shared with me, I don't know, 6 weeks ago maybe, and it was we're working with a customer who's pivoting and experimenting with their target prospect and their target market, trying some new things with us. And, one of the things that we're trying is we're working with them on approaching sales enablement titles. And, it's interesting because what we can do, because we are working with a number of different companies in the SaaS space, is we can learn, we can validate that things we're seeing on one project. Boy, is this about the product? Is this about the SDR? Is this about the AE? Or is this something sort of more globally happening in the industry? And what we like to think that we can pick up on some of those patterns more quickly. So take like sales enablement as an example. What a cool growing title in our industry. What a powerful position in an organization. But one of the things that you may or may not have thought about related to sales enablement is that because it's such a sort of a newer function and a newer role, that many companies are in varying degrees of having committed budget to the sales enablement position. So if you're looking for a buyer, you've got to really be aware of that. If you only target sales enablement, you're probably going to find more often than in maybe like a VP of sales title that some percentage of the sales enablement titles that you talk to are going to have, are not going to have budget. Like they're going to have a lot of authority and a lot of influence, but not directly have budget. And it's just related to like I don't know that I would describe it as immature, but relative immaturity of that title compared to VP of sales, VP of marketing, right? And so, we can start to see that with some of our customers, and then we can validate, oh, is this a real theme? Is this a real trend? And then we can apply that towards the work that we're doing with others. So we do think, that it's a benefit to work with companies that are in the same space but not directly competing with each other, that there's a really like a good positive learning that can occur because of that.
That's a great point. And I know we're short on time, but I think those insights like that are ones that you really almost have just to gain from experience. It's hard to get some other way. And the last thing I'll say too, this quick, really a question for you is there a benefit from these guys coming in and they enter the organization and they're this third party aid, and there's not all the attendant, I guess maybe weird interpersonal organizational psychology dynamics that you sometimes have that develop within a new hire, a permanent new hire for a company.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking with one of our projects, one of our customers about that. Like, sometimes when you are experimenting, there's some benefit to experimenting a little bit more aggressively with us than with your internal team, because there is a certain amount of fatigue that occurs with that experimentation. And so we do embrace the fact that can be a value add in working with us, and embrace the fact that we can be sort of preparing some smoother pavement for SDRs that follow behind us. And so that's definitely something we feel really good about. The other thing is that more established, enterprise type companies, or companies that have grown up to be in that enterprise category, but maybe were high growth, SaaS companies not so long ago, sometimes have an existing team that they use for a subset of what they do. And then we're off to the side as a compare point, as a special projects team, or maybe that consistent team, so that if you have turnover and things like that, that you can kind of count on us to be there as like an engine while you're doing experimentation or while there's change in your own organization. So I think that, it can help even things out a little bit, and it can also be an experimental sort of place for you guys if that's what you need.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to break it down, because if you have more freedom to maybe try things that someone who's on a more permanent basis is less likely to do. So yeah, Marika, I know we're almost out of time here, and I want to make sure everyone can get a hold of you. So can you give people more info on where to contact you and where they can learn more about Inside Sales Team?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would encourage everyone to come visit our website, which is InsideSalesTeam.com, and learn a little bit more about us there. And then I would love to hear from anyone. Like I said, happy to talk to you about how we can have an impact on your organization, but also really happy to just share best practices and be a part of that sort of virtuous cycle and circle of improvement for all of us in this industry. So I'll on LinkedIn at Marika Kemble at Inside Sales, and would love to connect with everybody and anybody.
Awesome. Marika, this has been great, and I really am excited about what you guys are doing. It's very, very cutting edge, and a lot of people think cutting edge, they think of technology, but I think you guys are showing different approaches to building an inside sales organization that's elite for it. So thanks so much for coming on. This has been excellent. Another great session here for Aligned. Everybody will have more sessions to come. I encourage you to get in touch with Marika if you need help with your team, and we will see you for the next session here at Aligned 2017.
Thanks, Jeremy.